Today on Final Judgment, we're going to clear out another bizarre area of American politics that you don't often hear spoken about in the news or on the campaign trail, but that has been a part of American politics for as long as American politics has been as dirty as it is, combined with telephone technology. And that is push polling. Now, you might have heard of it. You might know enough about it to know that it is poll-like. It has certain characteristics of a normal telephone poll, and that it has negative connotations, that it's used to attack a candidate. Both of those things are true, but that doesn't mean that every poll that has negative characteristics about a candidate is a push poll. Most campaigns, almost all campaigns, conduct their own polls, and they might test how different narratives work in certain states. You know, if I say this about my opponent, will this make them support me? If I say this, that doesn't necessarily make it a push poll because they are still analyzing that data and they're talking to a small number of people. No, the fact that a poll contains questions with negative information about one or more candidates does not make it a push poll. In a push poll, the questions are skewed to one side of an issue or candidate, the goal being to sway large numbers of voters under the guise of survey research. So under the guise, not actually doing survey research. With a push poll, it is often very difficult to find out what organization is behind it, whereas in traditional polls, they will tell you. Only a few questions are asked, all about a single candidate or a single issue, uniformly negative or rarely positive. Time is not wasted asking demographic questions because there's no analysis actually being done with that data. And the number of people called is very large, sometimes several thousand. So if you actually just wanted to find out what narratives would work, you'd talk to 500 people because it costs money to do that. If you just want to fool people into voting for the wrong candidate, you will talk to as many as possible. And that's the additional fact in this. It's not just that they're trying to sway your opinion, it's that very often they're using information that isn't remotely true, and you're going to see that in some of the examples we give later on. It's also important to note that reputable polling organizations, as well as the organizations that support them, do not support push polling. The American Association for Public Opinion Research, the American Association of Political Consultants, and all of those other organizations filled up with people that know all sorts of stuff about polling do not support push polling. So, we're talking about this as if it's important. Why are we stressing this? Well, because it is actually important and it has been crucial in certain races. So we're going to talk about some of the worst examples from just the past couple of decades. One that we bring up on the Young Turks a lot happened back in John McCain's presidential campaign, not the most recent one, the previous one. Voters in South Carolina reportedly were asked, would you be more likely or less likely to vote for John McCain for president if you knew he had fathered an illegitimate black child? Now, the actual fact was that McCain and his wife had, in fact, adopted a girl from Bangladesh. But that was either lost or ignored by the people who were running this push poll to try to smear him. Now, yes, the actual smear depends less on them lying about it and more about them assuming that voters in South Carolina are racist enough to not vote for somebody for having a black child who was actually Bangladeshi, but the point still stands. And more recently, it also happened during the 2008 election with Barack Obama. Various push polls suggested that Obama was a Muslim, that his church was anti-American and anti-Israeli, that he met with pro-Palestinian leaders in Chicago and with PLO leaders as well, that a Hamas leader had endorsed an Obama victory in the presidential election, and that Obama had called for a summit of Muslim nations excluding Israel if elected president. None of which is actually true, but who cares? This is American politics, and we got to win us the presidency. And that brings us to today, where we have Marco Rubio, Donald Trump, and Bernie Sanders campaigns all bringing up allegations that they have been targeted by push polls. And in some of those cases, they have very good evidence. Donald Trump has been incredibly furious about it, but just wait, he's going to be running his own push polls soon enough. You don't think he's going to stoop that low? I think he will. Unfortunately, the problem is that it's very hard to prove. And worse, it's impossible to prove in many cases that it was the actual campaign against you that was doing it. And that's one of the negative consequences of this money flooding into our political system. You get millions of dollars not technically affiliated with a particular candidate. You have super PACs who are willing to do anything to win an election. And there you have a proliferation of push polling. Whereas in previous decades, you would have had an actual campaign possibly being looking bad because it was traced back to them. Now, who the hell knows who's doing it? It could be a candidate that you support, and someone who supports him has millions of dollars to spend. And so that's where the final judgment-y portion of this video comes in. Push polling is BS. It's absolute BS, and it's bad for American democracy. Not just because it's negative, not just because it's inaccurate, but because anybody can do it. And anybody can say whatever they want, and nobody pays the consequences other than you as a voter when the wrong candidate gets elected, or possibly the person who was trying to run a clean campaign and they were being smeared by big money. And so the final judgment here is that we have to get rid of push polling, but thankfully, by getting rid of big money in politics, we can get rid of a significant amount of the push polling as well. So that would be 2 corrupt, anti-democratic birds and 1 stone. And that's my final judgment.